The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
This is why you can't judge a game by the final score. This was one of the biggest 9-point blowouts I have ever seen. A totally lopsided game. A game totally dominated by the Green Bay Packers. And if you want to look at stats, Micah Parsons, half a sack, 3 quarterback hits. No. Micah Parsons owned this game, as did the Green Bay defense and the Green Bay offense, which rang up over 400 yards. And I think for the first time since Jayden Daniels got here, he looked, Doesn't mean he's meh. It just means that Washington was dominated by a far better team. And what we heard about this game going in was, okay, these are two of the best teams in the NFC, maybe contenders to unseat the Eagles. And we come out of it with, Green Bay definitely looks good enough to unseat the Eagles. Washington wasn't good enough to unseat the Packers by far last night. And if the Packers aren't quite at the Eagles level, then Washington really isn't a contender this year. Now, this is the middle of September. It's September, the 12th. So we're not even at the midway point of September. And as my buddy Steve Zabin likes to say, this is a kaleidoscope league. It looks different week to week. And how the Commanders look last night may not resemble how they look a week from Sunday when they take on the Raiders. Things change. But there were some real weaknesses exposed last night. And Green Bay was playing without 2 starting offensive linemen. They lost arguably their best receiver before he even had a catch early in the game. Jaden Reed went down with a shoulder injury. This is a guy who had 3 catches for 45 yards and a touchdown last week against Detroit. In the opener, he had 55 catches for almost 900 yards and 6 touchdowns last year. So playing without him, they were totally dominant in both the run game and the pass game. They outgained Washington on the ground significantly. It was 135 to 51, so almost 3 times as much rushing yards. In the passing game, they were dominant. And Jayden Daniels was just, he was dinking and dunking because he couldn't find open receivers. It wasn't just the pass rush led by Micah Parsons. Their secondary, it's a 2-headed monster, of course. The pass rush goes along with play in the secondary, but just nobody was open. And Jayden Daniels can say this.
They played better on us, and not really much to say.
Well, there is a lot to say, and there's things that have to be looked at seriously for a football team which had dreams of stepping up this year and may still do it. But this was what we call a reality check. And Barry Zerluga's got a column about it in the Post today. He says the Packers push the Commanders around. They look faster at the skill positions and stronger on both sides of the line. They led 14-3 at the half, and the predominant sentiment was, what? Only 14 points? Yeah, I remember that when it was 7-0, you look around, you go, really? They only have 7 points? I think Kirk Herbstreit said that at one point. Green Bay outgained Washington 404 to 230, but it was more the eye test about this, really. And as I say about Micah Parsons, if you look at the stat sheet, it doesn't tell you anything about the way he dominated this game. He kept Daniels on the run all night. He tied up offensive linemen. He made all-pro linemen jump off sides because of the jump that he was getting off the line of scrimmage. And as Barry says, here's the real question. When has the Commanders' offense with Daniels at the helm looked less explosive and easier to contain? It's that the Commanders' receivers were never open. It's that absolutely nothing developed downfield. It's an electric offense that was, as he says, diffused. The Commanders' longest play was Daniels' 20-yard touchdown pass to Zach Ertz that pulled them within 17-10 early in the fourth quarter. That was the only point, by the way, in the game where I thought, maybe they will pull out some magic here. Maybe they will find a way to tie the game. And then the Packers just went on a march downfield, scored another touchdown to put the game out of reach. You know, I look at this and I go, okay, if this is what we're going to see the rest of the year, this is kind of the step back that everybody said might happen with this team, that teams that come out of nowhere, surprise people, then get the tougher schedule, then get shown on national TV more often, we see a little bit of regression. Now, you know, Daniels was off passing against the Giants, who aren't nearly as good defensively as the Packers. And last night really never had a chance to show whether or not he's got his timing down. And, you know, you look at some of the numbers that they had in receiving. Terry McLaurin, 5 catches for 48 yards. Here's the more important number. Terry McLaurin's being paid $35.4 million this year. All of the Packers receivers combined and tight ends are making $25.4 million. So you take all of their receivers, and that included Jaden Reed, who didn't even play last night, essentially, out early in the first quarter. You take all those guys, and they're making $10 million less. Now, you could say, yeah, Jordan Love's on his second contract, so he's making significantly more money than Jaden Daniels. But and I don't fault them at all for giving McLaurin the deal. But he's not the game changer, at least yet, with this team this year that he was last year. Some more of the comments that, and this was really, I think, smart from Peter Schrager, who got dunked on by Ryan Clark unnecessarily. Like Ryan Clark said to him, your opinion doesn't count because he didn't play. This is what Peter Schrager, now of ESPN, said yesterday morning.
Don't be shocked if they come out there and they shut down Jaden Daniels. That is how good this Packers defense is. And I believe Jeff Hafley is operating at such a level right now that this might be the story of the NFC. I don't think it's overreacting. I don't think it's hyperbole. I think that this defense is so good and so loaded at every single position with all this collection of first-round talent that we could be looking at a lot of teams saying, what's wrong with the offense? No. Packers defense is that good. And
you almost hope that's the case. Like, you hope that Washington's offense really isn't as bad as they showed last night, that Green Bay is that good. Dan Quinn on trying to control Micah Parsons.
Obviously, when you're behind like that, we're just trying our ass off to get back into the game. There's some tough assignments to do. We chip, you help when you can. Like I said, I thought overall, just a tough night in terms of style and attitude of how we want to play, identity. So we just missed the mark on those. But I don't want to. I'll give the credit to Green Bay. They played well.
Yeah. I think you have to. You could. The identity that he's looking for wasn't there, but was it more that Green Bay was just that good? Here's Daniels on their secondary.
They did a great job of their scheme, and it's a really good football team. So at the end of the day, it's only week 2. We'll learn from that. We got to get better. It's a long season. Yeah.
Well, that and now a long season, maybe without a key player. It's being reported by Adam Schefter that Austin Eckler tore his Achilles. I don't think there was much doubt about it when they carted him off the field. And this is a guy who does a lot of things for this team along with leadership. And if they have to go the rest of the way without him, now we're going to find out, I guess, about Chris Rodriguez, who was inactive again last night. But this was Quinn. He refused to speculate whether this is a season-ending injury, but said if it is, this about Eckler.
Yeah, that will be significant. Let's hope for the best and see where we get to. But he does provide a lot of unique things for us. Like I said, there was a tough game from the injury standpoint, and we'll just get a better sense with he and Wise are the two. Just let's go get a look and see where we're at. I don't want to just speculate and see where we're at, but. He's a heck of a player for us.
Wise is Dietrich Wise. I don't know if this is season ending. They're calling it a quad, but anytime you see a player get carted off the field, it usually is. One of the few times I can remember that it wasn't, Albert Hainsworth, that fat slob who got winded in Detroit, they carted him off the field and gave him some oxygen, and he actually played again in the game. But generally, if you go off on a cart, for the most part, it's season-ending or long-term. And they hope to get him back. They paid him $5 million. He played with New England. He's part of the job that was done against the Giants up front. And they would certainly miss him the rest of the way. Bobby Wagner, the sage veteran, on all the injuries. And the body count is high from last night. You not only lose those two guys, Eckler and Wise, John Bates with a groin injury, and Noah Brown with a groin injury. We got 10 days before they play again. That may help, but it's possible they may have to go into the Raiders game without them. Wagner.
Some of them were pretty good ones, but I think you try to be positive because in a moment like that, there's a lot of negative thoughts going on in guys that just got hurt head. And if everybody has that same mentality, it just, brings it down. So personally, I just try to be positive and try to, put positive energy out there.
Bobby, how difficult is it a game like this where it just doesn't feel like you can get momentum going?
This is professional, you know what I mean? I think it's one of those situations where you just got to make something happen. You don't want to try too hard, but, we just had to make something happen defensively, and we didn't do that.
Yeah, and here's another thing. If you're not scoring many points, you hope your kicker comes through. Matt Gay, they went through 4 kickers last year. They go, okay, let's get a veteran kicker in here. Let's pay what it takes and bite the bullet on that. Matt Gay, making $4.3 million, missed 2 very makeable field goals. Nowadays in the NFL, if it's inside 60, you should make it. One of them he doinked, and one of them he just missed. And both of them had the distance, but neither one made it through. And, you'll give it more time. He wasn't very good in the preseason. Wasn't a factor in the Giants game, but last night missing 2 field goals. It wouldn't have, decided the outcome of the game, but that's got to be a concern going forward. Other concerns, Scott Van Pelt last night with Damien Woody in the studio on what the two of them witnessed in this very, very lopsided 9-point win for Green Bay.
We've gone to great lengths through the years to make it very clear early in the season that a couple of games is way too small a sample size to freak out. However, it's enough that you have seen from Green Bay to comfortably say what about them?
Oh, they're right there with Philadelphia in the NFC. Like the way that the Green Bay Packers are playing right now. And I said when Michael Parsons got traded to the Packers, he brought juice with him. And that juice is overflowing to all those guys, particularly on the defensive side of the football. Scott, we saw, the whole game, how those guys are hunting like hyenas out there, flying all around the field. Listen, this is a Washington Commanders team last week that ran for like 220 yards. Yep. They had 51 yards rushing tonight, okay? They held this Washington Commanders team in check. And when you're playing this well defensively, think how aggressive that Jordan Love and company on offense can play, knowing that they have a defense that can totally back them up.
It certainly helps frame what was a really disappointing week 1 from Detroit, right? You see a game like this against a team who made it to the NFC Championship game in Washington, who has an explosive offense. They didn't go nuts against New York, but New York's got a nice front as well. But now this is 2 weeks in a row where they've really stifled on defense. And then as you said that can really help Love. How does it help so much for Love to get into a rhythm on offense when the defense is giving him the football back right after one series after another?
Well, I think it's the aggressiveness. We saw it time after time with the Green Bay Packers on offense. You have a defense playing the way that they're playing, where they're basically eliminating the opposition's offense. You're able to take more, when I say gambles per se, on the offensive side of the ball. We know this Green Bay Packers team, they have so many weapons, whether you talk about Tucker Kraft, Matthew Golden, Romeo Doubs. They have a plethora of weapons out there. So this is what it's all about.
Watson's still on the bench and will be back maybe week 5, perhaps week 6. Reed went down very early with a shoulder injury in this one. So weapons, yes. But the way this defense is playing, and again, I made the point, Detroit had the late touchdown week 1. Washington got the late touchdown here. I mean, the game largely wasn't that competitive, and they bottled up Daniels. 2 weeks is only 2 weeks, and you are at home, yes. But you're very comfortable in saying put them right there with the team that just won the Super Bowl.
Absolutely. Think about this over the last 2 weeks. The Detroit Lions, who had the number one seed in the postseason last year. The Washington Commanders, who went to the NFC Championship game. And both of those defenses held both of those teams to 250 yards and less.
Josh Jacobs is going to be our guest. We'll visit with him a little bit later. Again, he's got a touchdown in 10 consecutive games. Anything about this concerning to you from the Washington standpoint, given that Daniels Did look like he rolled an ankle there late, did stay in to get the late touchdown to Debo. But the offense hasn't really popped these first 2 weeks. They've got the Raiders, and then they hit the road for a couple. Is there anything concerning about this NFC Championship team from a season ago that folks around here in our neighborhood are hoping to see ascend? What haven't you seen from them early?
Yeah, I mean, I think the deep passing game, those explosive plays in the passing game hasn't been there yet. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it can take a little time to get that connection going in the deep passing game with Terry McLaurin. But I think that's the element that's missing with the Washington Commanders. They were able to run the ball for a ton of yards last week, but they need those explosive plays in the passing game.
We got to go. But as a man that made his living trying to keep his quarterback's uniform clean, the get-off speed from number one in the white jersey.
It's sick. It's just absolutely sick. I felt so bad for the rookie out there just trying to block him one-on-one. It was bad. It was real bad.
Hey, I mean, rookie or the right tackle or left.
It didn't matter.
Or Tunsil, the left tackle, has been around for a while. It's really hard to keep. And he's got some company there. That get-off speed, that's a youngest defense in the league.
Youngest team in the league.
Well, they don't look it.
No, they didn't. They were dominant. And, again, the eye test tells you how Micah Parsons played last night. Don't look at the stats, half a sack and 3 quarterback hits. This guy was all over the place. He was dominant. And, look, Green Bay had a good defense coming into the year. They just added arguably the most dominant defensive player in the league, given to them by Jerry Jones. Yeah, they got a couple of draft picks in return. Okay, the way the Packers are playing, that's going to be deep into the 20s, maybe into the 30s when those selections are made. And, and we're going to hear this later on, Micah Parsons was on the set with the Thursday Night Football people for Prime, and a whole bunch of fans stayed. I mean, the Green Bay fan base is unbelievable. There had to be like 3,000 people still in the stands to watch this. And they were chanting, "Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Jerry." One other quick thing, and I'll probably jump back to this a little bit later on. When is it time to say, okay, Marshawn Lattimore was a mistake? He's not only now not an asset, he's a liability. They went after him early in the game. And what we heard last year, now remember, he was hurt when he got here, so he missed a few games. Then he makes his debut for the Commanders against his old team, the Saints. And they apparently don't throw at him. Probably should have, but you come out of that going, okay, all right, man, they got to maybe shut down corner there. But then he was just the rest of the way. What we heard, he's still recovering from the injury. He's still getting used to a new system. Give him the offseason. Let him get ready, and you're going to see the all-pro Marshawn. No, not anymore. He's making a good salary. The only thing it's being decided now is you're not going to offer him a contract extension. But, for everything that Adam Peters did, all the great moves that he made in free agency last year and all the hits that he had on the veterans like Zach Ertz and Bobby Wagner, you're going to miss sometimes. And he went for it. The reason he went for it was because they were so savvy, not that it was that hard to make that decision, but in taking Jaden Daniels and then developing him into as good as he was, they looked at the middle of the season and go, we may have a chance here. If not this year, the next 2 years when he's still under a rookie deal, let's go for it. And they have. Getting Tunsil, those are the kind of moves that I applaud them for making. But when you make some of those moves, you're not going to hit all the time. And it's often been said that when an organization makes a player available, they know something. Really good organizations don't let good players get away. And not that the Saints are a great organization, but I think there was, sort of an air of, well, let's chuck it long and see what happens here with Lattimore. And if this continues, I'm not even sure he makes it through the rest of the season. Or I guess he's got a guaranteed deal, so maybe they could put him on the practice squad if they need to. Or I don't even know how it works. But putting him out there last night was not a plus. It was a negative, especially early on. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. Coming up, let's shift to the good old days like last year when they were making their run to the NFC Championship game. Terry McLaurin was on a podcast that is now being done by Debo Samuels, Cleats and Convos. So I guess he started this last year when he was in San Francisco. He'll do it here. His first guest this year, Terry McLaurin, and McLaurin with the good times, how the run was accomplished last year in the playoffs. That's next. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
If you watch the game, you know that the 27-18 final score doesn't tell the story. It was a lopsided game, and just combing through more of the numbers on this, the final numbers really don't tell the story, and they're dominant as well because Washington got a couple of late scores when the game was pretty much decided for Green Bay. They did make it 17-10 in the fourth quarter, so that was somewhat impressive, but then Green Bay was able to put it away. 404 total yards for the Packers, 230 for Washington. Jaden Daniels struggled passing. He threw 42 times for only 200 yards. That's 3.9 yards per pass, while Love got almost 300 yards on half the attempt. Well, not quite half the attempts, but 19 of 31. That's 8.2 yards per pass. So he had almost 3 times as many yards per pass as Daniels did as well. And the first half, I mean, this was clearly a go-to-bed at halftime type of game because at the half, the Packers had outgained Washington 274-82. They had 13 first downs. Washington had 4. And the numbers for the Commanders' first 3 drives, remember the Packers had a 92 and a 96-yard drive in the first half. Their first drives, 12 plays for 23 yards. So essentially 3 and outs. Ain't going to get it done against a team that was that dominant defensively and was able to run the ball and was able to, really chew them up with a tight end named Tucker Kraft, who, frankly, I'd never heard of going into the game. He had 6 catches for 124 yards and a touchdown and a 57-yarder, which made you go, is anybody covering these guys? I mean, the pass rush, which was so good last week against Russell Wilson, obviously wasn't good enough to contain a quarterback who's mobile. I mean, we saw Jordan Love take off and run, but he's not Jaden Daniels. And that was really eye-opening from last night. So a little break from the misery and a little time to reminisce. There's a new podcast. It's not a new podcast, but it's a relocated podcast from Debo Samuel, who did it last year in San Francisco. Now he calls it Cleats and Convos. He had his fellow receiver Terry McLaurin on yesterday and asked him to recap the run to the NFC Championship game last year.
They're really well coached. I have familiarity with Jeff Hafley.
You know what? That's not him. That's not. I went to the wrong Terry McLaurin. This was, where was that? There it is. Terry McLaurin on Cleats and Convos with Debo Samuel on the run to the playoffs last year.
Honestly, going into the playoffs, we actually went down to the wire with Dallas, and I believe that game was pivotal to win because you don't want to go into the playoffs with a loss, and that would have been the second time we lost to Dallas. So for us to come out with that win going into the playoffs, I felt like gave us a little momentum. Then we go into Tampa, which is a tough team to play against. Todd Bowles throws a lot of disguises at young quarterbacks and quarterbacks just in general. And, that game, we started off with a deep ball to myself, and I just felt like we was really rolling during that game. At the end of the game, defense got a huge turnover after we didn't get that 4th down. And, we was able to get the ball back, score, and then ice that game. And then we go into Detroit. I felt like Detroit, that was a crazy game because nobody was expecting us to win that one. I feel like, that wild card game, like a lot of people, it was maybe like a toss-up. But Detroit, I know not too many people saw us going into a team that had home field advantage and winning that football game. And I felt like the turning point was when we threw that screen to myself for a touchdown. OZ and Dayami did a great job blocking. And I took that to the house. And that next drive, Goff threw a pick 6 to Quan, and I was like, it's on the popping now. It's over. A lot of people don't know. Detroit, they fans be talking that talk.
Nah, facts.
And so I had a dude that was sitting like right behind me, and he was talking to me the whole game. And then after my touchdown and that pick 6, he didn't say nothing else after that. So that was crazy. But to be in that type of atmosphere, that's the furthest I had ever made it in the playoffs before. And for us to come out on the winning side of a team that a lot of people didn't think we was going to win, that was a great team win. And then, we go into the NFC Championship, and I just felt like, we turned over the ball a lot. You can't give a team like Philly so many chances. And we was fortunate enough to beat them when we played them at our stadium when we had 5 turnovers. We beat them when we had 5 turnovers. So you just wish you could have some of those turnovers back, but they were Super Bowl champs, and they played a great game. We just shot ourselves in the foot, and that was just tough. But I respect the way that we came and we competed at a high level. But when you in those championship games, you got to minimize the mistakes, and we didn't quite do that. Sure. So we trying to get back there and get to the Super Bowl this year.
Nah, for sure, we definitely trying to do that.
Most definitely.
So at last season, at what point did you know that you guys was gonna make a deep run off in the playoffs?
Man, it's a good question. I'll probably say one of the biggest turning points was the Hail Mary. And I'm not going to even just say it was because the Hail Mary was such a crazy play, because that's just such a low percentage play. But the way we executed at the end of that game, it brought to life everything that DQ is always preaching. Winning time moments. He's constantly talking about that. And I feel like a lot of teams in the NFL may go through those situational practices. But DQ, we go through a situation pretty much every practice, and it seemed like every situation he brought up in practice showed up in the game, and we were literally ready for that play to come up. And a really slept on part of that play was, they were playing the Hail Mary play before we even had enough time to get it down there. So we called a little 10-yard out to myself, and we got an extra free 10, 12 yards.
Right.
You know what I mean? That put us in position to get the Hail Mary. And even the way we executed that, Noah was in his spot, Zach was in his spot. I was getting double teamed and punched around, but I was in my spot too. You know what I mean? So we just executed at a high level at the end of that game. And I think at that point we knew, all right, man, we can make a run at this thing no matter what the score is. The game ain't over till it's over. And I feel like we had that mentality, but to go and improve it in that moment was a huge part of our season.
No, facts. I done seen a lot of Hail Marys, and, a lot of them been called. I've yet to complete one, but definitely when y'all definitely caught that one, and you had the DB in the back of the end zone just celebrating for the game over.
Hey, bro. Hey, shout out to him, man. He's a hell of a competitor. Me and him were going back and forth all game. And when I saw the clip of him getting the crowd hype, and then he tipped the ball and gave it right to Noah, I was like, dang.
Karma will come bite your ass.
Yeah, man. That football's going to get his get back. But much respect to those guys at the Bears. But, I've never been a part of a play like that. It felt like the whole city was rocking. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and here's something else about that game, the Bears game with the Hail Mary. I was there, and yes, it was rocking. That place went nuts when Noah Brown caught that pass. But it was a little bit later in the season, but still what would be considered early season. I think both teams were 3-1 at that point, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was Game 5 of the season. And, it was like, okay, you got the top 2 quarterbacks here. Both teams are playing well right now. Which team is better? It looked like Chicago should have been the team that won the game, but the stupidity of that safety Stevenson trying to fire up the crowd and being out of position and actually tipping the ball to Noah Brown for the game winner. The two teams went in opposite directions. Now, I'm not saying what we had last night is exactly the same because it was only the second game of the season, but both teams were 1-0. Both teams coming into the season were expected to be factors for the Super Bowl. What we saw last night is the Commanders are not at that level. They didn't play that well, but Green Bay is just loaded. They're better. They got better personnel, which is understandable because of the Ron Rivera disaster, there was a lot of rebuilding that had to be done. I don't care about the recalibrating. They got the quarterback. The quarterback's still going to be good. He's still going to have games like last night. They're still growing pains. It's only the 18th game he's ever played in the NFL, so there's that. But, is it possible that there's some kind of a divergence just like the Bears game from last year? I'm not saying that Washington is going to fall apart, but with a much tougher schedule this year, with better teams and tougher scheduling of games like on a Thursday night on the road and things like that, is it possible that the Packers go on to be the best team in the NFC And as you heard Damian Woody say, he said that they're better than the Eagles right now. So they're the team that defeats them. And, if Washington has a year where they get 9 wins and slip into the playoffs, that's a good year. That's a good year. If they just miss with like 8 wins or even 9 wins, I don't think that's necessarily derailing the train or anything like that. I think it's just sort of expected with the growing pains that go along with it. But if you want to use one team as kind of a litmus test, and I know teams vary from year to year, but you saw what Washington did in going into Detroit in the divisional playoff round. And you saw what Detroit did last week against the Packers. And you go, because the Packers were totally dominant against Detroit. In fact, until the Commanders got that touchdown pass to Zach Ertz in the fourth quarter, the Packers hadn't given up a touchdown in all year. So what is that, 7 quarters without a touchdown? Pretty good. Pretty good. So, keep that in mind if you're looking. And would it be a shock if down the road you see these two teams meet up in the playoffs? No, it wouldn't be. And the result could be different. Remember last year, Buffalo and Baltimore met early in the season in Baltimore, and Baltimore won easily. And then Buffalo beat them in the playoffs. Part of it was turnovers. Turnovers, another thing. Here's 2 games. Washington hasn't turned the ball over. They also haven't created a turnover. But it's not like, last night could be chalked up to that, too. Sometimes you have a game where the ball bounces funny and you have a couple of turnovers and you blame it on. No, they were just totally outclassed by a team that looks to be much better right now, much stronger, and going the rest of the way without Austin Eckler is going to be tough because he does so many different things for this team. And how we see Chris Rodriguez fill that role, that's going to be interesting to watch. But again, 10 days to kind of sort through the wreckage, see where they go from here, and they actually are almost a touchdown favorite against the Raiders a week from Sunday. Up next, more dissecting of what went on last night at Lambeau Field. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. You're on the road, short week, iconic place against a good team which acquired arguably the best defensive player in the league. You lose a game. What's the shame? What's the worry? Well, the worry is the way you were dominated and coming out of this game with some pretty serious injuries, including one that will likely end the season for Austin Eckler. So what was supposed to be pretty much of a Friday is more of a oy vey. Hey, that's pretty good. I should put that on a T-shirt. Anyway, we'll talk more about what happened last night in Green Bay. We got Ravens preview coming up at 10:30. They're looking to rebound after the collapse in Buffalo this week on Sunday Night Football, and we'll see what happens as they are the biggest favorite in the league this week, 11.5-point favorites against the Cleveland Browns. Where do we start? We start with the way that Micah Parsons dominated this game with stats that don't really tell you anything. He had a half a sack, 3 quarterback hits, but this was about protecting Jaden Daniels this year, right? That's why they went out and they acquired Laramie Tunsil. They are going to pay him a big salary this year. They may extend him. Sam Cosmi's not going to be ready until game number 5, at least. They put him on IR to begin the season, and he may or may not be back to form that he was last year before he got hurt in the playoff game against Detroit. So they've been playing Nick Allegretti at that spot, and they drafted Josh Connerly with the number 1 pick of the draft. That's the guy that Cliff Kingsbury wanted, and maybe he's going to develop into a very good player. But last night we saw that side of the line absolutely dominated. Between those two, they gave up 15 total pressures, 9 hurries, and 4 sacks. 4 sacks just on that side of the line. So that's a concern going forward. The schedule gets a little bit lax with the 10 days off and then playing the Raiders at home. But this is going to be a tough year. They've got games on short weeks. They got a first place schedule or a higher seed schedule, and they're going to struggle at times. And last night may have exposed some real weaknesses. And as great as Jaden Daniels has been, this was, I think, the first time that you looked at him and said, yeah, he's he's kind of ordinary. At least he was last night. Now, he may get back to the form he got to last year, and he may actually move forward because there's a lot of football left to play. I mean, it's a 17-game schedule, and what you look like in early September doesn't really have a big bearing on what you look like when it really counts at the end of the year. You want to be playing your best football in January, and maybe they're going to get there. But this was a performance that is not indicative of the final score. You know, sometimes you get blown out and you go, yeah, well, a couple of mistakes here and there, and maybe it's a different. No. This was a 9-point blowout in a game that was dominated by Green Bay, and I thought the time of possession was going to be much bigger than that. It was Green Bay 32.5 minutes, Washington 27.5. So the time of possession difference was only 5 minutes. And this surprised me too. Washington actually ran more plays. I mean, Green Bay had 2 monster drives in the first half, which ate up a lot of plays and a lot of time. But Washington actually had 65 plays last night. Green Bay had 63 plays. They had much bigger yardage total, of course, 404 yards for the Packers, 230 for Washington. And, the unsung guys just destroyed some of the sung guys, if you will. Marshawn Lattimore making a lot of money, 2 holding penalties, got torched early on. And their tight end, Tucker Kraft, he had 6 catches for 124 yards and a touchdown, a 57-yard play. Zach Ertz, after being pretty much invisible in the first half, got going in the second half. He was the leading receiver for Washington with 6 catches and a touchdown, but some of that looked like prevent defense late in the game for Green Bay as they were seemingly well in control of the game at that point. And arguably, the top receiver for Green Bay missed most of the game. Jaden Reed suffered a shoulder injury diving for a catch. He had last year 55 catches and 6 touchdowns. He had 3 catches for 45 against Detroit and a touchdown. So they played without him, and they played without 2 starting offensive linemen. Yet they were that dominant, both offensively and certainly defensively, with Micah Parsons, who we'll hear from in just a moment here. Anyway, this was Dan Quinn. He talks all about identity and so forth. And, the preseason doesn't really exist anymore. What we're seeing is kind of like late preseason football, but the games count. And if it's going to continue like this is going to be an issue. And the identity that he's looking for certainly didn't show up last night.
I think in September football, Dave, there is some. With disappointing, I want to make sure the identity and the style that we want to play is right. I can live with the mistakes. How fast can we get back to correcting them? And you're in game 2 and 3 and 4, that early piece, like sometimes those go not like you want. I just want to make sure our attitude, our style of finishing is right. And that's what I want to make sure we can get done. It just wasn't to the spot that I would like that to be at, even on a game where it doesn't go your way. I want to see the finishes. I want to see those plays and all 3 phases, and we just didn't have enough of those tonight.
Yeah, and when you are always looking for Jaden Daniels to make big plays for you, he couldn't do it. In addition to being sacked 4 times, he ran for just 17 yards, 7 carries for 17 yards, that ability to keep the defense back on their heels. That wasn't the case. Was it all him? No. Was it all everybody else? No. Daniels.
They executed their scheme, whatever it was. They executed really well because they won the game. And we just didn't make plays. Starts with me, starts with everybody up front, starts with the whole offensive skill group. So it's not pointing the finger at anybody. Collectively, we're all to blame, and we'll get back to work.
They did have a 3-game losing streak last year, but I think for the first time in the Jaden Daniels era, there is concern. And this is Daniels on what every quarterback should say in this situation. Don't panic.
I mean, we got 10 days to our next game, so there's nothing to dwell about it. It's early in the season. I wouldn't expect anybody in this locker room to hit a panic button. We faced a really good team, and we came up short. So we're moving on to the next game.
And you turn to the veterans in this situation as well. Zach Ertz, been there, done that, but in this game, it just didn't happen.
We just couldn't get ourselves going. It wasn't the 3rd or 4th year we couldn't get out of first. And so for us, it's just starting faster. I talked about last time I spoke that you don't want to start slow against that team. Micah's too much of a game wrecker. They got too many good players when you're one-dimensional. So we just got to be better. Got to start faster. Ultimately, falls on us.
Yeah, and Terry McLaurin, who got himself paid, he had only 2 catches last week. He had 5 catches, but for 48 yards, not the $35 million that they're paying him to do. And he's facing a secondary which not only had the big push up front, but was tough to get around.
They're really well coached. I have familiarity with Jeff Hafley being at Ohio State, so he's a great defensive mind. They do a good job of just keeping the ball in front of them, and then when you got a pass rush that can create some chaos, it can make it tough to make plays. But at the end of the day, we get paid as well, and we just got to do a better job of executing. And we couldn't really get to our tempo, which is something that we thrive on, and makes it tough on defenses. So when you just are in those 2nd and long, 3rd and long, allows the defensive line to pin their ear backs and for the defense to play a little soft. So as they got more comfortable, they played a little bit more man on 3rd down, which was kind of expected. But I didn't feel like we really made them uncomfortable like we should have.
No, and part of the reason that they couldn't do it is, as Packers coach Matt LaFleur says, they had number 5 under control.
When you're playing a quarterback of the caliber of Jaden Daniels, you better be mindful of how you're rushing the passer. And our guys just went out there and did an excellent job. There were very few, I don't know what 7 for 17. That's a hell of a day defensively. If you told me that that's what it was going to be after the game, I'd say advantage us.
Yeah. Advantage big us, advantage Packers, who have looked absolutely defensively spectacular in the first 2 weeks of the season. And Micah Parsons has made the immediate impact that they hoped for. He was limited snaps in the first game against Detroit. Still made a sack in that game, still made his presence known. And again, if you watch the game, this was a game that truly needed the eye test. So if you're watching the game, you saw, even with statistics that don't blow you away, half a sack and 3 quarterback hits, how dominant Parsons was. And not only is he a great football player, he's a smart football player. And he discussed when he went on last night on the postgame show on Thursday Night Football on Prime about the way that he was able to step right in and pick things up.
First, as soon as the trade happened, I was like, man, when you want me to come in, I'm super ecstatic. And then the second process is, are you willing to come in early? Are you willing to stay later? And I just think it's fun. When I learn new things, I get excited. When a DC comes up to me and is like, we're excited to have you. I got so many ways I want to use you, but you got to learn this. I'm like, all right, well, hurry up. Let's get to it. So, it just gets me excited. I'm ecstatic, and Jeff's a hell of a play caller.
There's an intensity to you even after the game here where I'm kind of scooting my chair over because you're scaring me a little bit.
You're a quarterback.
Yeah, you're a quarterback. Well, and he hits quarterbacks very hard like he did Jaden today 8 times. I want the culture of the Green Bay Packers and how it differs from the Cowboys. How have you felt it, even though you've been here for a short time?
I wouldn't really say the culture because I think I was with a great group of guys. I love that locker room. But I'm just happy I came into a locker room where they established that they run to the ball. I'm joining something that I was already used to, running to the ball, playing hard as hell, and just hitting what I mean? Coming into a culture like that where you don't have to bring that and you're not trying to change a culture is so much easier transition.
Right. What's it been like so far being here? I mean, you guys obviously have this cheetah package you've put in. You've done some different things to where I know for you it's frustrating. Teams are going to triple team, they're going to double team, they're going to send an emphasis. It seems like they've kind of given some freedom of, hey, let's move around, let's find different ways to put you in different spots. What's that been like to be able to kind of be in that system with these guys?
It's truly amazing just because the guys were so welcoming. I don't think there was no hate or envy. They're just like, bro, you one of them guys. You're a special player. We're just happy you're here. And I mean, from the very beginning, they just embraced me and challenged me to go out there and be great. Even the coaches, they're like, if it was up to me, I'd just let you go full time. And I was like, that's what you need to do. But overall, just doing what I do, I don't care. Like what I was telling, it don't matter who it is. It could be the best O-tackle, you're all pro. I got to go win. I have to win now. And that's just the rage in me. I'm pissed off.
He played that way last night, and he was winning on most of the plays. This was Tony Gonzalez, part of the pre- and post-game show with Micah on this question.
So obviously the chemistry has come in there. On defense, you guys already look like one of the best defenses in the league we were talking about before you got here. It looks like it is. the best defense in the league, especially with you being here now. Offensively, Jordan Love, they're complete. People talk about the trade, comparing it to Reggie White when he came here. And you know what Reggie White did when he came here? He brought a title to the town. What are your expectations for this team? What do you see this team ceiling? What can they do?
I think we can do great things. But at the end of the day, as y'all know, it just goes week by week. We got to consistently put that effort, that energy every week. And then great things can happen. We can get back to that bowl. And I obviously, I don't want to compare myself to Reggie at all. He had like 70 sacks in 4 years. Like, that's like unheard of. But if I could just come close to his legacy, I'd be a very happy person.
Well, speaking of legacy, you talk about the last player in Green Bay Packers history to wear number 1 was Curly Lambeau. What went into that decision? What were the conversations? What were the things? Because that's greatness. That's belief from this franchise. That's trust in you. That's one of one. Talk to me about that.
Look at them all throwing up the one.
Yeah, you know, I just thought that was, you know, honestly, that was dope. When they told me the history about it and how he brought this organization together, I just thought it was a unique opportunity. They said no one in 99 years wore it. And I was like, what better way to create a legacy than follow this guy? And I hope I do great things for him.
So far, so good. Marshawn Lattimore. Marshawn Lattimore. Oh, boy. Micah Parsons, as you heard all the crowd hanging around to chant things like, thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Jerry. And I think the difference in the Reggie White comparison, remember this, Reggie White was really the first free agent, the first really big name free agent. And this was 1993. He was actually part of the process. They went to court over this, and it was in a Minneapolis courtroom where essentially the way was paved for free agency in the NFL. Like in the past, if a player went from one team to another, the commissioner would decide the compensation. And generally, it was 2 first-round picks. Now, people forget this, but Wilber Marshall was a huge part of the last Super Bowl team for Washington. He had been a great linebacker with the 85 Bears. His contract ran out at a time when players didn't change teams. But Bobby Beathard thought it was worth it to give up 2 first-round picks for him, and I think ultimately it was, as he was the best pass-rushing linebacker on those teams with Washington, the one that got to the playoffs the year before to the second round, and then the one that won the championship, won the Super Bowl after the 91 season. But they were willing to give up 2 first-round picks to do it. Reggie White was the first big-name guy to be able to move from team to team without any compensation. Now, I also would asterisk it with this. The NFL did try in 1976. They tried one experimental year where they said, well, let's see what happens in free agency. Most teams weren't willing to do anything. The owners weren't going to open up their pocketbooks for anybody. The Redskins with George Allen did. And they got John Riggins, whose contract was up with the Jets. And they paid him, I believe Riggo told me this, it was like a 5-year deal, $1.5 million, like $300,000 a year. Crazy. But that was big money then. So he changed teams. Gene Fugit came from the Cowboys as a free agent. The World Football League had folded, so they brought in a couple of guys from there, including Calvin Hill, and they tried it. But they shut it down after that, and they went back to the Rozelle rule, is what they called it, where the commissioner would decide the compensation. So Reggie White, not only maybe the greatest defensive player in history, in the conversation anyway, changing teams in his prime, going from the Eagles to the Packers. It was not only a big deal for the Packers in that they didn't have to give up any players or picks to do it, but it was also a sign that, okay, Green Bay is a destination for black players, because that was an issue. Players didn't want to go there. They said that black players couldn't find barbers. So the Packers, when they got Reggie White, they hired a barber to come in once a week and cut the black players' hair. I mean, these things seem foolish now, but 30-some years ago, that was actually a thing. The Micah Parsons thing is different. They traded for him. They gave up 2 first-round picks and a starting defensive lineman, and they gave him a $188 million contract. With Reggie White, it was different. And so I think that while Micah Parsons can make a difference and can take a good team and maybe make it a Super Bowl team, the comparisons to Reggie White don't really fit there, at least for me. So it's funny to hear those things. But I'll tell you one thing. He is a force. He is an absolute force on the field. And if he stays healthy, watch out, because that Green Bay Packers defense, they got good players on it, and he makes everybody better because you always have to be aware of where he is. You always have to pay attention. You saw Laramie Tunsil pull back with a false start in a key situation just because Micah Parsons was lined up in front of him. Laramie Tunsil's been around for a long time. That's a Pro Bowl tackle, and that's the difference that he can make. Really impressive last night. This little follow-up here, this was over the weekend. Davey Johnson, the manager for the Nationals, when they made the leap to become a playoff team in 2012 and kind of touched off like a 7-year run where they were a really good team, winning the World Series in 2019. A terrific manager who Tom Boswell made the case should be in the Hall of Fame. He's got numbers alone for that as a manager. But Tom recalls a game that he managed for the Baltimore Orioles back in the 1990s. This is when they were in the playoffs. Game 1 of the playoffs against Seattle in 1997, the divisional series. And as he says here, Tom's column, Johnson benched 3 of his best hitters, Rafael Palmeiro, B.J. Surhoff, and Roberto Alomar, all left-handers who had struggled against Randy Johnson. Instead, Davey Johnson used backups. Jerome Walton for Palmeiro at first, Jeff Robillé for Alomar at second, Jeffrey Hammonds for Surhoff in right field. Hammonds had been a really good player, but he was aging at that point. That is benching 72 home runs and 258 RBIs in favor of 28 home runs and 91 RBIs. Palmeiro alone had 38 homers and 110 runs batted in and had better numbers than the trio. It was unsettling, no matter what the numbers showed, to see that the best hitters were benched for a playoff game, but it worked. Hammonds walked twice and scored twice. Robillé delivered a key two-strike sacrifice bunt that put runners in scoring position for Eric Davis's 2-run single that gave the Orioles a 4-1 lead. Walton went hitless at 2 at-bats, but the overall idea worked. Randy Johnson left the game after just 5 innings, having thrown 100 pitches, giving up 5 runs on 7 hits and 4 walks in Baltimore's victory, 9-3. And Pat Gillick, who was a great general manager and the GM of the Orioles at the time, said, "I'll bet no one in history has ever started a playoff series by sitting down their leading home run hitter and RBI guy, but it's the illogical thing to do." Here's what Johnson said. "That's why they pay me the big money to make these kinds of decisions. If it doesn't work, I'll take the fall." He was fearless. He also was a terrific second baseman and was a 3-time Gold Glove winner, 4-time All-Star, 13 seasons, batted .261 with 136 home runs and 609 runs batted in. Traded to the Braves in 1972. He set a record for second baseman with 43 home runs, played a couple of years in Japan. And the one thing that Tom says about him is not only was he a great manager and a very forward thinker, somebody really who was like an analytics guy before analytics, but he was a guy who stuck to his principles and also was a beloved part of that Oriole dynasty back in the 1960s and the 1970s, where they went to 4 World Series between 1966 and 1971, and they won 2 of them. And Davey Johnson is a big part of that legacy, and the number of players that are left from this, I didn't realize this. The players who are left from that run that they had, the 4 World Series, there are just 3 left. Jim Palmer, who's in the Hall of Fame, Boog Powell, and Don Buford. That's it. Brooks Robinson has passed away, quite a few of them over the years, and now Davey Johnson gone at the age of 82. So good column from Tom today. Remembering a guy, and I do remember when he came to Baltimore in 1996, and he said, "We're going to win. We're going to win right away, and I'm going to be the one that moves Cal Ripken from shortstop to third base." They won. They made it to the playoffs twice, and maybe without Jeffrey Mayer interfering with that foul ball, that maybe they go on and win that series too, and they get to the World Series. Who knows? But Davey Johnson, who won a World Series with the New York Mets, I think a case can be made that he should be in the Hall of Fame. We're going to get to the Ravens preview coming up. Just the news that came out yesterday. The NFL says, and this should be no surprise, the NFL is not going to fine or suspend Lamar Jackson for shoving a fan into the stands during their loss in Buffalo. When you first read the headline, and I saw this on Monday morning, that Lamar Jackson had shoved the fan, the first thing that comes to your mind is, oh, he's pissed when he's leaving the field after they blew a 15-point lead, and he shoved the fan coming off the field. No. This was after DeAndre Hopkins scored a touchdown, and a fan reached over and slapped him on the helmet, then did the same to Lamar Jackson, who did what he should have done. He just gave him a shove back into his seat, and the fan has been actually barred not just from games in Buffalo, but throughout the NFL. And Jackson did apologize the other day. He said that shouldn't have handled it that way. He needs to keep a cooler head, and so forth and so on. And John Harbaugh, his coach, was very much defending what Jackson did, as did Eric DeCosta, the general manager who spoke to him. Now, the question about the Ravens, and we'll explore this coming up, is can they rebound from such a tough loss? It's not that they lost on the road to a team that's a Super Bowl contender. It's the way that they lost. And this has become too much of a pattern for a team that's been known for defense, that they have been the defensive identity of the NFL for 30 years, going back to the days of Ray Lewis. And right now, they're not that team. They're a team that needs to outscore you. They got arguably the best offensive player in the league, in Lamar Jackson, and they're not performing up to the way that typical Ravens teams have performed in the past. We'll get to more of that coming up as we do Ravens preview. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.